So a lot has happened this past couple of days in the Pokemon TCG, the first of which is in the Japan Championship Series. We had Raging Bolt take the win against a Grimmsnarl deck. Now granted, if you look at this board state here, it was a bit unlucky that the Grimmsnarl deck did brick a lot, but Raging Bolt players out there, congrats. Where there is a will, there is a way. As you can see, the winner, Kabu Fukase, winning there. 14-0 by the way, essentially undefeated throughout the entire run. With a pretty interesting list that you might not expect, by the way. No Noctiles, which has been the sort of go-to for Raging Bolt. And I think this is a bit of a smart play because the Hoothoots now are, of course, still a threat in terms of a liability rather, with Phantom Dives being able to set up a big 3-prize turn, and also with the popularity of Marnie's Grimmsnarl, those can also be pinged non-stop by Grimmsnarl, and even if you do evolve them into Noctiles, they are still taking damage from Frostlasses. So instead, why not forego the Noctile engine entirely, and then just rely on your Mew and your Pheasantipity draws, as well as Teal Mask Ogerpons to get you your outs. And you play 3 Crispins to help you keep energized, and 3 Area 0 Underdepths so that you can try and flood your board with your Ogerpons. Now of course, a lot of your Pokemon do have abilities, so Frostlass can still ping them, and of course, they can still be set up on with multi-prize turns, but that is why there is the one lone little Chien Pao here. If one of your Pokemon does take a lot of damage over time, let's say your Squawkabilly from a Phantom Dive or from Grimmsnarl pings or Frostlass, once you have Area 0 down, you can just place Chien Pao down and you can effectively remove Chien Pao and then 2 other Pokemon from play. It's a very smart tactic. You also have Iron Leaves here, so again, countering the Marnie's Grimmsnarl. If you have 2 Ogerpons, you can go from nothing to an attack by just going Teal Dance to 2 Ogerpons, placing down Iron Leaves, move the 2 energy onto Iron Leaves, and then attach for turn, and you are one-shotting a Grimmsnarl. But with Raging Bolt winning a major Japanese tournament, this is your warning now. Be prepared for everybody else to look at this and go like, ooh, let me start playing Raging Bolt as well now. But speaking of preparing for upcoming matches, we have some updates for the 2026 Pokemon Championship Series from Pokemon themselves. The season will kick off on July 1st for Pokemon TCG, with League Challenges and League Cups resuming on July. Now again though, this is for the 2026 series. The World Tournament is still the 2025 series, so what I'm about to say does not affect Worlds. But there are some very important changes happening for the 2026 series, so expect these changes at your local challenges and cups. Firstly, when it comes to the bigger things, so the regionals and whatnot, there is going to be an adjustment for the Swiss rounds, and that is going to be that there will now be an additional round if there are at least 65 participants, which, as far as I'm aware, almost all of the major tournaments did have at least 65 players. So essentially this additional Swiss round will help increase the number of chances for other players to enter the top 32 or possibly make it into Top Cut. So as they say, for most H divisions, Swiss Phase 1 will feature 8 Swiss tournament rounds, but this can of course fluctuate depending on the tournament. So of course it is best to check with the tournament organizers so you know how many points you need to get into Phase 2 and whatnot. Another important thing is that no matter what, there will only be a cap of 16 in asymmetrical top 8. So this is down from the 32 from the previous season, which to me is a bit like counterintuitive, kind of like, because you're increasing the number of Swiss rounds, so it's more likely that players will reach asymmetrical top 8, but then you're limiting the amount of players that can actually take part in asymmetrical top 8. But at least I guess it increases your chances for the general player to place high enough to earn a cash prize, I suppose, right? I mean, that's exactly what they say, right? Its additional Swiss round will improve the experience as they go for Top Cut and also cash prizes. But I just think that that's kind of funny. But the more important one that will affect basically everyone is the end of round rule change. So currently, as it works right now, when the timer is called, you get your 3 turns, right? So it's turn 0 on whoever's turn it is when time is called, then your opponent gets a turn, then you get a turn again, your opponent gets a turn. Effectively speaking, you both get 2 more turns. Now, I think because of the increased number of Swiss rounds, of course, tournaments are going to last a lot longer. So in order to try and combat this added time by introducing the extra Swiss round, they're trying to save time by adjusting the end of round rules. Especially because of the fact that I'm sure we've all seen it. When there's 5 minutes left, your opponent and you are both playing like a madman. You're not even bothering checking your deck, you're just grabbing whatever you need, playing as fast as you can. The moment time is called, you both just start relaxing, like, okay, now we can take it slow. Now we can take however long we need to think. And that's exactly why they say here that it ends up making the turnover time between rounds significantly longer and unexpected. So the 2 major changes here are that instead, once the timer is called, now you are effectively only getting 1 turn each. So once time is called, whoever's turn it currently is, they are turn 0. So they get to play out the rest of that turn, and then your opponent will get their turn. So turn 0 and then turn 1, and that is it. Only 1 turn each. And on top of this, there will also be an overtime clock of 10 minutes. So once time is called, there will be another 10 minutes. And if by then you are not done, then the game is a draw. Ideally though, 10 minutes should be more than enough time for your 2 turns. But I get where they're coming from. With this in play, you can now expect that there is a hard 1 hour round no matter what. So what this means is basically, be prepared to start playing faster. Or, alternatively, if you know that you are a slow deck, God of War, Dragapult, you should also learn when to start scooping. If you're playing a best of 3 and you're 10 minutes in and you know that the game is lost, you should probably scoop sooner rather than later. I know that this can kind of be difficult, especially again with God of War and Dragapult decks, because even when it looks like all hope is lost, there's always that chance that you can, technically speaking, make a comeback. It's what the decks are best at, winning from behind. But just be warned that now you will need to try and play a little bit faster at least then. And although these changes will take place right away in the 2026 season, starting in July, I would like to remind you that yes, it might sound like this sucks, right? You could be trying to set up a big 4-prize turn across 2 different turns, and now instead you only have 1 single turn. As a reminder, the entire 2026 season will have a lot of changes throughout it. The first is going to be the introduction of Mega Pokemon, which will be worth 3 prizes. So there will be some growing pains, I think, initially when the rule takes place, but maybe once Megas come around, you will still have the option to go for big 3-prize turns or maybe even 4-prize turns at the end of a game by, say, KOing the active Mega as well as something else on the bench. However, at the same time though, I know this is very early to speak about it, but even further beyond, once we move over to 2026 itself and rotation happens, something to be careful of is how you close out games. Right now, you might think, oh, I can just boss up the that Mega Pokemon and then go for the big 4-prize turn, right? That's how a lot of games seem to get their win. They just aggressively boss non-stop in the Gust to get their wins. Something to be concerned about next year is that a lot of the Gust cards are rotating, specifically Boss itself. As you can see, Boss is still a Regulation G card, and so far there have been no reprints of it with a Regulation H or beyond letter. In a similar vein, Countercatcher, also Regulation G, will be rotating next year. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly enough rather, we have been getting some other Gust cards being printed with the new regulation marks, but they are a lot more controlled than, say, Boss's orders. I know a lot of people get annoyed when it's like, oh, just you got Boss for the win off the top deck. That's so skillful, right? While there are still alternatives once rotation does happen. For example, Litzia's Appeal, also a form of Gust, but specifically for a benched Pokemon. This can still work for bossing up Pheasantipity. Alternatively, there's also Meowstic, where if this is in play and you have the Chill Teaser Toy item card, then you can gust up anything into the active. And more recently now with Regulation I, we have the Evolution Gusts, so Hops Double where you evolve it and then you can gust something into the active. Or in the Mega Brave set coming out later this year, we also have Hariyama, essentially the exact same as Hops Double, evolve and then pull something into the active. The nice thing about Hariyama though is that it is not a colorless Pokemon, so it cannot be turned off by Team Rocket's Watchtower. But otherwise, that's pretty much it, this quick little update. Think of this as a little PSA to start learning how to play a little bit faster or learning when to scoop, or alternatively, start playing a super fast deck, like for example, the Raging Bolt deck. You won't have to worry about the end of round changes if you don't ever hit the end of the round. But otherwise, that's gonna be it for this little quick update. Until next time, bye-bye.